Welcome to the Aguilar Conversations, a global perspective. I'm Tony Aguilar. On today's podcast, on October 7th, Hamas unleashed a terrorist attack on the nation of Israel that resulted in 1,400 people dead and the taking of over 200 people as hostages. Israel has responded with a military campaign with the goal of destroying Hamas and removing them from government. Can Israel achieve that goal? And what will happen after the war is over? That issue next. Joining me from Tel Aviv is Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces. Peter, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Tony.
Let me ask you this. The professed goal of the military campaign into Gaza as a result of the October 7th terrorist attack is to destroy the military apparatus of Hamas. How will you know when you have won?
Tony, our goal is actually twofold. It's first of all to dismantle and destroy Hamas as a governing authority of the Gaza Strip. And second, to destroy its terrorist apparatus. So they're twofold precisely because the Hamas terrorist organization has become a terrorist entity, a government that is using all of the tools of government in order to create the terrorist army that conducted the massacre on 7th of October. So we will know that we've defeated them when they no longer have the power of government and when they are pursued as a terrorist organization that does not operate in military formation, and ideally that they have no military terrorist capabilities whatsoever. Of course, that's a very, I would say, it will be a tough mission, but we are in this for the long haul. We realize that it's not going to be a short war. We are taking all of the necessary precautions in order to be ready and conduct activities with a high level of force protection, precisely because we realize it's going to be a long war. It's not a quick fix.
A lot of people said you could probably, with the firepower that Israel has, you can do great damage to their military capability and move them out of the government. The problem comes what comes after. And I want to ask that from two perspectives. One, from a governance perspective, but two, after this is over, there's going to be a huge generation of younger people, particularly male, who will remember, rightly or wrongly, that Israel destroyed their home. How is Israel prepared to deal with that?
So obviously we are watching very carefully this idea, but our efforts are not against the ideology. The people of Gaza the best outcome would be that they determine their own destiny after this war. But it has to be a destiny without terrorists. It has to be a destiny that does not jeopardize the sanctity and safety of Israelis. The people of Gaza are suffering, and they have suffered extensively at the hands of their own government, who made this very poor decision to go to war with Israel. There is one thing that is certain. The situation at the end of this will be better than it was on October 6th from a security perspective. They can never have that power again. They have to be, the organization has to go, and the ultimate reality afterwards needs to be one which is improved from a security perspective, firstly, but also for the people of Gaza. So a government that comes in, a governing authority that replaces the Hamas institutions, needs to be a government that takes care of the people of Gaza. We've shared extensively over the years how Hamas has built a huge tunnel network beneath the Gaza Strip. Musa Abu Marzouk, a Hamas leader, said last week on radio and on television show in Arabic when he was asked, why don't you let people take cover in these tunnels? He said, the tunnels are for our fighters, not for the people. The UN has to take care of the people. So when we are looking at the how this will move forward, where it will go in the future, the people of Gaza deserve a government that will take care of them. The people of Gaza, if all of the investment of this tunnel, this terror tunnel system, had gone into the people of Gaza, Gaza Strip would be flourishing, would be a good, strong economy. It would be a vibrant place of knowledge, of education, of health, of social services. But Hamas chose to do everything else but invest in the people. So even for the people of Gaza, the outcome of this war needs to be beneficial. And this is why we're saying that the world needs to rally around this paradigm change, a paradigm that a terrorist organization that has ruled the Gaza Strip now for 16 years and has done no good for anybody and has only made everybody's life more difficult needs to go. Any reality at the end of the day, other than the existing one before this war, will be a better one for everybody.
Let me ask you this. You as a military man, you well know that war has at least two components. One is the military campaign. The other one is political. And so right now, Prime Minister Netanyahu is facing pressure internally. And the world in of itself, which is generally supporting Israel and its obvious right to defend itself, but it is beginning to shift a little bit. President Biden is getting tremendous pressure in the United States from the Muslim community. And as you well know, one of the Palestinians who is now a congressperson has just been censored because of her remarks. But also, UN Secretary Guterres has been a little critical. And the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, had to walk back her comments about being with Israel unconditionally. And some of that has to do with the way the war is being fought, because while it may not be collective punishment, there are parts of the world that are seeing it as that. So my question to you is, how do you take back the narrative of what's actually happening on the ground and why what you're doing is necessary?
Yeah. So necessary, I'll answer first with your last component. Why is it necessary? Because we can't have this happen ever again. And indeed, we're very grateful for the friendship and support from leaders around the world in our war effort against Hamas. Everybody understands that Hamas needs to go. The challenges that we face in the battleground perhaps sometimes are misunderstood, but there is no easy way to get rid of Hamas precisely because they have established all of their infrastructure in the urban arena. So when we are mobilizing and attacking positions, it may look to an untrained eye, that we're just shooting haphazardly. But every bomb or tank round or shot that is fired is aimed at an observation post, at a command and control position, at a rocket launcher, at a tunnel access point. And the devastation that we're seeing perhaps in the images, which are challenging, and I would say this is a lot of the international pressure is actually about the civilian casualties and the implications of the war effort on these people. Indeed, we don't know exactly what the reality is, because Hamas, they're saying numbers that have no backing in order to contribute to their war effort. So we are grateful for the support. I would say we're grateful for the alliance with the US and our US brothers and sisters in arms. And of course, there is battle groups that the US has sent here to the Middle East as a show of force for the other enemies that we have. But everybody acknowledges that the change needs to happen. We are doing our best to try and minimize and mitigate the civilian anguish, to differentiate, to distinguish between the terrorists themselves and the civilians that are not involved and non-combatant. But nevertheless, it is a huge challenge for any military. We work very closely with the US military allies and colleagues, and we have lessons learned from the different campaigns that the US have conducted. But nevertheless, the war has to be decisive. The victory has to be decisive in the end, that Hamas doesn't exist. Because if they exist, they create a new norm for terrorism around the world. It won't end here in the kibbutzim, in the towns of southern Israel, if we don't get rid of them. It is sending a very clear message that if terrorists hide behind a hospital, that is a norm that can be accepted. And I would say, no, it cannot be accepted. We need to work together. We need to be very attentive. We need to utilize all of the efforts that we can in order to evacuate people from harm's way, to create humanitarian pauses so that people can get out of harm's way or restock and resupply if they can. We have to work with the international humanitarian organizations on the ground in order for them to conduct their humanitarian missions. And indeed, it's going to be a challenge precisely because of how Hamas operates and their modus operandi to take advantage and exploit the civilian arena and the civilian theater. This is the challenge we face, and this is what we need to take into consideration.
Let me ask you this. In terms of the humanitarian aspect of it, one of the things that people have asked for is the humanitarian pause. And Secretary of State Tony Blinken has been doing his shuttle diplomacy. And one of the things that even President Biden has asked for is like maybe a multi-day pause. And what we're finding is, I think Benjamin Netanyahu is agreeing to maybe 3 to 4 hours of a pause. Given some of the concerns that the international community is having, why not do a multi-day pause? Because with the firepower of Israel, some may ask, is it feasible to think that Hamas could reconfigure itself after 24 hours? So why not do at least a day or maybe 2 days to allow a lot of humanitarian need or supplies to get into Gaza?
So it is a bit above my pay grade, really, to comment on the politics and the diplomacy of the issue. I can echo what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said regarding ceasefires and hostages. There are 239 Israelis and foreign nationals being held by Hamas and other terrorist organizations in the Gaza Strip. The youngest of those just had its 10-month birthday. Yesterday, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad broadcast a video in their psychological terrorism campaign of 77-year-old Hana Katzir and 12-year-old Yagil Yaakov. These are the people. These are the people. So there cannot be any idea of ceasefire or end of hostilities while these people are still being held hostage. Our goal as the military is to take the fight to Hamas, to negate their capabilities, to destroy their infrastructure, and make sure that they don't have this power ever again to conduct these atrocities against our people. And so I would say that when we look to the politicians for advice and guidance, we are seeing that the IDF has a very clear directive and a clear expectation from the people of Israel that we deliver on that directive. From a personal perspective, I have now been in reserve duty since I came in on the 9th of October. And there is a general level of concern, existential concern in Israeli public that when is it going to happen to me? Now, this was the sense that on the 7th of October, when we woke up in the morning, my wife turned to me and said, "Are they coming to our house too?" And I live near Tel Aviv, not on the border with Gaza. So there is an existential sense that there is a just war that needs to be won and fought. We need to do it in a professional way, like our US colleagues, in a way that limits civilian casualties. And we are grateful for the sentiment and support that we are receiving from world leaders and communities around the world. And we're listening to the challenges that they face. Absolutely.
Is there, and I know you're the spokesperson for IDF, but is there concern right now within the administration of the prime minister that, let's say, the Biden administration, for example, may totally shift in terms of how it begins to speak about the war? Is that of concern for the prime minister and, as a result, for the military campaign that's presently ongoing in Gaza?
I can't really comment on that level of discussion. That's, as I said, well above my pay grade. The military is very, very focused on taking the war to Hamas, pursuing their leaders. We've killed dozens of their field commanders, the people that were planners, the people that created the munitions, the terrorists themselves that breached the fence and came into our communities and butchered our babies in their bedrooms. That is where we are focused, and that is I'm able to comment on that extensively, not on the politics.
Now, given that, the United States, when it went into Iraq, the first thought was that they would be welcome as liberators from a dictatorship. And quite frankly, there are a lot of Palestinians who are well aware that Hamas has been a disaster for them and their territory. Um, how is the military being welcomed by people in Gaza now? I mean, what are you hearing on the ground that as the military come in, are people looking to them and saying we need to get rid of Hamas, or what are you hearing?
So we're not coming in that mindset at all. We're very, very focused on destroying Hamas, not controlling the Gaza Strip. That is not our aspiration whatsoever. The idea is making sure that Israel is safe and secure once more, and that this organization never wields that sword of death above our heads ever again.
My last question on this would be, is the military prepared to stay in Gaza? Because the prime minister did say that they will be responsible for the security. So how long do you think the military is prepared to stay in Gaza?
That's a very good question. Our operation is not bound by time. We have no time limit. The limit is the implementation of the goal. And when Prime Minister Netanyahu is talking about overall security, it is exactly that, creating a new security regime, but not controlling or reoccupying Gaza as it was before 2005. The idea is to restore safety and security, ideally pass on the authority to a new authority that the Palestinians will determine, ideally, but it can't be one that jeopardizes Israel's safety and security.
My guest today has been Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces. Peter, I want to thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Tony.
And I look forward to perhaps speaking to you again in the future. Be well.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. And join us again next week as we discuss another issue of international importance here on the Aguilar Conversations, a global perspective.
The Aguilar Conversations, a global perspective, is produced by Casa Margo Communications Group.